Thank you all for joining us, and a warm welcome to our very first seminar of the Aphasia CRE seminar series. My name is Caroline Baker from La Trobe University, and I am co-facilitator of the seminar series alongside Michelle Attard, who joins us from the University of Sydney, and our Centre Manager, Callie Maskell, here at La Trobe University also. Can I just check, Michelle, that you can hear us?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Thank you. So today we are thrilled to have a welcome address by our Director, Professor Miranda Rose, and a presentation by Chief Investigator, Professor Leanne Torr. We've done our best to test run the technology for today's presentation. So please be patient and bear with us as we use technology across multiple sites. 56 Zoom links to individuals and groups of people from all parts of Australia and even internationally. We are really excited to have over 100 participants with us today. Well, that's what we are hoping for as people join in. We have groups of you gathering in rooms from various health networks and universities. We also have many of you attending from your office or your home. And we are recording this seminar, and it will be available on our website in about a week's time if you'd like to refer back to it. Wherever you are, we warmly welcome you. Firstly, we'd like to encourage you to use our Aphasia CRE website. Here you'll find more information about our team, projects, activities and resources. If you haven't already done so, please join our community of practice via the website. This means you'll be kept up to date with the latest information via emails, invitations and a monthly newsletter. You'll receive invitations to our upcoming monthly seminars. So don't miss out on the details of our next one, which will be in August. As you may be aware, we are active on social media, so please engage with us on Twitter and Facebook.
Thanks everyone. We're very pleased to be hosting the first seminar here at the University of Sydney. And I'd like to introduce our speaker today, Leanne Torr, a speech pathologist and Professor of Communication Disorders following traumatic brain injury at the university. Leanne's no stranger to CREs. She's been involved in the clinical CRE for aphasia that began in 2009 and was the chief investigator for the CRE called Moving Ahead in Brain Recovery. As Miranda mentioned, today Leanne is going to be discussing the research program that she leads within the present aphasia CRE. It's my pleasure now to pass over to Leanne.
Thank you. Thank you for that lovely introduction. And welcome everybody. So we have some people here in the room and I believe we have numerous people possibly all over Australia. Hard to know, but wherever you are, thank you for tuning in and for our very first CRE webinar, which is a little bit of a milestone for us, I think, as a CRE. It'll be the first of many. We're going to have many of these webinars because we're doing so much amazing, wonderful work, and we're extremely excited about that. So today what I'm going to do is just give you a brief introduction. So I'm not planning to talk for more than about half an hour. Just of what we have in our current plans for the third program that's outlined in the CRE, but it's by no means going to be all that we do. I think we're right at the beginning of this story, and I think there'll be many other projects that will come out of this particular program of research. I would like to acknowledge Rachel Redake and Emma Power for some of the work that I'm going to be talking about. Also Melissa Brunner and John Pearce. John Pearce has helped us with the slides kindly, so for the CRE slides. So just to kick things off, the CRE, as Miranda mentioned, is a large collaboration across a number of universities, and it extends nationally but also internationally, and it's led out of La Trobe University by Professor Miranda Rose. And luckily we have a wonderful interdisciplinary group of researchers who are working together to try and solve some of the problems of aphasia, rehabilitation and recovery. As Miranda said, I just want to reiterate one point out of this sort of vision statement that we have, and that is that we're going to transform the health and wellbeing of people with aphasia and their families. But particularly today, we're talking about enhancing current services and thinking about how can we make things more cost effective and sustainable and interdisciplinary, and really focus on equipping things to meet the needs of these people and their families. And right now, I don't think that we do have a very good set of models of care to serve people with aphasia and their families, especially those who are not in big cities or close to specialist units. As Miranda said, we are interdisciplinary, and we are resting our research on a foundation of a series of areas such as, with a focus on implementation science. These are sort of almost cross-cutting themes across the work that we're all going to be doing across all programs, and as such, these elements will also come into program 3, which is about technology. We'll just move on to talk about what traditionally happens in rehabilitation pathways now. We have this sequence of events. Somebody is admitted as an inpatient into a hospital where they may or may not stay for very long. They're discharged to an outpatient service, then may be able to engage in some kind of community rehabilitation, and then ultimately many of the people that we're dealing with are discharged. I've put lines across that sequence of events between inpatient and outpatient, and then between outpatient and community, because these are risk points. These are where people can drop out of the system altogether and we can lose them. So we know that transitions between these phases can be extremely risky and problematic, and people can be lost to our services altogether. So our traditional models of care really are not fit for purpose, sadly, and we have this idea of this disconnects in the chain of care, and this is for not only for people with aphasia but for people with acquired brain injury more broadly. We know that demand on healthcare services are increasing, and this is because of increases in population growth. Our population continues to age, and we, as a result, there are just increasing pressures on the healthcare dollar. And because of that, in some cases, there's a decline in services, particularly in the primary healthcare community service provision areas of healthcare provision. And in some circumstances, there's a complete absence of services. And this is a huge problem because we know, and it's been recommended in the Stroke Foundation Clinical Guidelines for Stroke Management in 2017, specifically that stroke rehabilitation requires this highly coordinated and developed systems of care, which may be needed across the lifespan. So we have a big mismatch here, and this is our problem. But as all problems offer us, there are opportunities in this. And so these are issues for us to address in a number of ways. And one of the ways that we're proposing in the CRE that we can address these issues is through technology and e-health. I thought it might be useful to offer a definition of what, whenever I speak about e-health or digital health or technologies, people say, what are you talking about? And I'm going to draw on an excellent definition from a paper that I'm going to talk about a little bit in detail today that was published by Melissa Brunner and colleagues in 2018. And basically this definition really encompasses the complexity that we see in this particular area. So, and I think this is why people get confused by this area. So the first part of this definition is really talking about data, health data. So electronic health records, population health data, biobanks, outcome data, consumer generated data, and claims data from insurance companies, for example. So there's all this data, and people talk about big data, and that's one part of eHealth. There's another part of eHealth that's all about informing and tracking health and wellness. And so the proliferation of mobile devices, all the things we can get on our apps, and all the apps we can get on our smartphones and tablets, sensors, wearable devices to tell us how many steps we've done in a day, for example. The use of social media and things like Twitter and Facebook and any other sort of online information, education information that's available, that also falls within the realm of what we would consider to be eHealth. And finally, we've got eHealth technologies which facilitate communication between health stakeholders, and that might be between clinicians working in a team, but it also may be between therapists and their patients. So things like having SMS text messages, push notifications from apps, social media platforms, and also through virtual and simulated therapy tools. And there has been some work from a number of researchers and clinics in terms of online therapy for people with aphasia. And I'm thinking, like, one example that immediately comes to mind is the work that Leora Cherney has done with a number of platforms to look at helping people with aphasia perhaps do some more self-management of their rehabilitation at home. So that's the definition, and then an easier way to process some of that information was put forward by a model that Tim Shaw developed in 2017, and he sort of summarised these things as eHealth is health in the hands of consumers. It offers a way to put the power of people's health in their own hands through apps and devices and sensors. It also is about data, records, and what he called the quantified self. So, and there's a lot of work in the fields of prediction. You know, if we get a certain amount of data at a certain point in someone's recovery, can we use that data to predict what their trajectory of recovery is going to be? So data is used in many different ways. It's also used to provide precision healthcare. So genomics, for example, has grown considerably, even since Tim put this together back in 2017. And then finally, there's this idea of interacting with and between health professionals and also with clients, I would like to add in there. So the idea is that all these three domains contribute to the final outcome of a good eHealth service, which is informed, active consumers, prepared, proactive professionals, and an efficient, responsive system. So, and keeping in mind patient safety, patient privacy of data, access, and that we're encompassing research and education when we're talking about eHealth. So I'd just like to pause for a moment, and this may trigger some ideas for some discussion. And that is what our workplace is going to look like in 10 years' time. So I was at a workshop yesterday where we were talking about what life was like in clinics when we all started work, and nobody had a phone. Or we had a phone on the desk attached to the wall. We didn't have computers. We didn't really have much technology at all. I was very, very proud when I got my first Visy pitch, because that gave me some way of giving biofeedback. of pitch changes. And so we really didn't have a lot. We had tape recorders, we had the really old people amongst us, we had language masters that gave you, you know, immediate, people could record themselves and listen back to themselves, but it wasn't readily available. And I'm not that old. So we've gone through a fairly radical revolution in technology, I would say, since I first started my clinical work. And so we were asked in this workshop I went to yesterday, well, what's it going to be like even in 10 years' time or 20 years' time? And there was one paper, for example, that suggested that by 2030, which is just over 20 years away, 25% of the current activities that we're doing will be automated. So technology will take over functions. So it did make me think, well, which bit of speech pathology is going to be automated? And what are the technological disruptors going to be? And how is that going to change what we do? What are we going to have that's going to help us with diagnosis, with predicting and recommending treatment, with doing the treatment? Will people come into hospitals at all? Will that be a practical thing? So they're just questions to think about. I did have one example of a fellow that I've been working with in the United States at the University of Kentucky, and he's developed an assessment tool where you ask a person to leave a voicemail message, and the voicemail message gets recorded into the computer. It immediately converts from speech to text. That text can then just be quickly checked by the speech pathologist. And we're looking for evidence of politeness markers. So when somebody leaves a voicemail, can they use politeness markers in appropriate contexts? Say if they're leaving a voicemail for their boss, are they able to use relevant? And the markers that they're sociolinguistic markers, but we could be looking for anything. He's got an algorithm that goes through that text and quickly adds up how many politeness markers there are, and it gives a score. And what he has found, his name's Peter Muhlenbrook, and what he's found is that that score can predict whether somebody will be able to be stably employed. So that all happens fairly quickly. You can do that within about 10 minutes. So that has, in my mind, transformed a whole process of what we would normally have done as a speech pathologist, which is record something, sit down, write it out, then analyse it by hand, and then you may or may not have known whether that would predict return to work or not. You'd just think, oh, they're not going very well with their politeness markers. So I think the sky is the limit, really, in how we think about what are we automating, and what questions are we going to ask the data to tell us. And I want, obviously, for them to be meaningful questions. The other question when we talk about e-health is whether we have the capabilities to use technologies in health service provision. Are we teaching our students how appropriate levels of capabilities? What is the graduating student or an early career clinician, are they able to use technologies, and what are we wanting them to be able to do? So these questions were posed and answered recently, and this was a collaboration across a range of agencies. Liz Brunner is the chief author on this paper. It was led by Tim Shaw as the senior author. There were representatives in this study from a range of agencies, government agencies, at local, state and national levels. We had organisations like eHealth New South Wales, the New South Wales Health Education Training Institute, and then it was an interdisciplinary approach as well. So health sciences, dentistry, medicine, nursing were all involved in this. And this was a three-phase mixed methods study designed to answer those two questions that I just posed to you. What are the capabilities that we should be teaching and expecting of our graduates and health professionals? And so basically, I'm not going to go through all the methodology in the interest of time, but there were 39 stakeholders who contributed to multiple phases. It included focus groups, for example, and a Delphi consensus process. And what the sum of all that work was 4 key capability statements. And these were described in terms of knowledge and performance. So that paper is freely available. It's an open access publication in the Journal of Medical Internet Research. So I can recommend that to you as a place to start. And really this was trying to outline what are the foundation levels of knowledge and performance that we need to be able to practice in a digital health environment. So I think I've said the rest of that, but the final bit I want to include about who was included, it was ratified by the Ministry of Health in New South Wales as expected basic capabilities. So this is what they want all graduates of all disciplines to be able to do. And so I'm just going to give a little bit of a snapshot of the 4, but not going into a lot of detail because it is quite a detailed document. But things like digital technology systems and policies. So being able to understand, the knowledge statements were all about what we want people to understand, and performance statements were about what we want people to be able to do. So from this point of view, for example, the knowledge was about understanding the range and purpose and functions of various health technologies. So telehealth, secure messaging, web-based platforms, etc. And performance was involved. One performance indicator was demonstrating the ability to access and navigate digital health technologies relevant to the scope of a person's professional role. Another capability statement was about clinical practice and applications, and I think a lot of the work that we're going to be doing in our CRE relates to this particular capability statement. I've just included some of the areas of knowledge that were included in this statement. So web-based consultations, models of self-management, consumer-centred apps, patient portals. It's a very complex area that I think is underutilised at present. The third capability statement was about data analysis and knowledge creation. So being able to use data and data analysis to inform, deliver and improve health and healthcare practices at individual, team and systems level. So this is where a lot of the discussion about data, big data, being able to use machine learning comes in, and also establishing intervention effectiveness, which is also going to be a part of, I think, a pillar of the work that we do. And the final capability statement was about implementation. So the experience I've had with developing digital health technologies in treatment, it takes you on a different path to perhaps other more traditional forms of research where co-design is critical from the beginning. You need to be sitting down with your users. You need to be looking at whatever it is that you're proposing through the lens of their perspective and getting direct feedback before you even start. So the other aspect is advocating for change. I think us as clinicians, as researchers, as professionals in this space will need to drive change in this area and be a champion. We need to be champions and role models to enable others to use digital technologies. There are some people working in healthcare systems who are less able or don't want to be involved with these kind of technologies, and then there are others who are very easy, quick adopters. So it's really about working out how can we promote change within clinical teams. So the program in the CRE we've entitled Technology for Healthcare, Communication and Rehabilitation, and these are the core people who are included in the application. Myself, Emma Power, Annie Hill, Marcella and Michelle Attard. And as Miranda alluded to in her introduction today, we have 4 programs of research. We have 4 programs of research, and they're all underpinned by these principles of knowledge translation, standardised approaches to health economics, technology enabled aphasia research, and we're going to be building an aphasia research hub, which is very exciting. But today I'm just going to focus on that bottom left-hand quadrant of this diagram, which is the 5 programs that we have so far within the Technology for Healthcare, Communication and Rehabilitation program. So the first one that I wanted to mention is the Lift Home project, and this is in this program we're proposing the use of telerehabilitation to deliver all the components of the traditional LIFT program that's come out of the University of Queensland, and we're going to be delivering that directly into homes. So that just shows some of the components of that program. And we will be comparing the language outcomes when delivering LIFT in the home via telerehabilitation against the standard in-clinic delivery of LIFT. So that's kind of the first major project. The second project is the Aphasia App, and this one comes out of La Trobe University. Aphasia affects the speed, ease and effectiveness of communication between patients and care teams, particularly when they're in the hospital and as they're moving through their care journey. So the Aphasia App has been developed with key end users, so there's been quite a lot of preliminary work done, pilot work done to build this app, and it supports the professionals who are dealing with that person with aphasia, and that might be speech pathologists, but it could be the physiotherapist, it could be the doctor, it could be the nurse, so that the person with aphasia has this app, and it's facilitating both the health professional and the person with aphasia to engage in their rehabilitation and have effective healthcare communication. The app is designed to accompany the patient throughout the transitions in their healthcare. So this is starting to address those lines that I was talking about in that first diagram. It's aiming to close potential communication gaps and improve patient safety and satisfaction. Very exciting. The third area that we're going to be looking at is communication partner training using e-health technologies. Most health professionals who interact with patients with aphasia receive little or no specific training for this task. And so we know that communication partner training is considered best practice. We have considerable evidence to support the use of this approach, but it is not routinely accessible for health professionals for a range of reasons. So this project is going to evaluate the effectiveness of an e-health communication partner training program in helping professionals communicate in real life aphasia settings. And we're also planning to include in this project training healthcare professional students and in our universities. The next area of work encompasses the recently published core outcomes that have been published by Sarah Wallace and colleagues in 2018. So we know that a key element of aphasia management is valid and reliable assessment of aphasia, and we've got these core outcomes now very usefully that were achieved via consensus. And so this project proposes the validation of telerehabilitation service delivery of that research core outcome set. So one of the goals will be that we will have a validated set of outcomes by the end of the CRE, which I think you can sort of see we're looking at some building blocks. We're looking at some foundational elements that we're going to need to build all our other research upon. We also have started to develop an online automated assessment program, and what that does is allow us to record conversations of people with aphasia and their partner, and it provides some automated analysis of the features that are happening in that interaction. So things like the amount of speaking time somebody what percentage of speaking time does the person with aphasia have compared to the partner, what's the turn taking like, and it also allows us to investigate some other social cognition features, such as the person's expression of emotion, how they're using their body posture during online interactions. And so this is very preliminary work, but it's going to be a very exciting addition to this program of research. So in thinking about what our digital healthcare pathway for aphasia rehabilitation should look like, what we want is not the inpatient, outpatient, community and discharge track. What we want is being able to use digital health to identify early on what we need to be working on, what the person's strengths and weaknesses are, and perhaps to be able to predict their future needs and build a program of treatment that is going to look at their more lifelong trajectory of what that person's needs might be, to have personalised management that is tailored to their life goals, their strengths and their support needs. And I think eHealth has the potential to provide lifelong access to the specialised technologies that we can provide for training and support as it's needed. In thinking about what do people with aphasia and their families need and what's going to be important to them, it's having their own data going with you, continued opportunity to try new technologies as they arise, and having the opportunity to practice if that's what they want to be able to do. And for clinicians, if we can create some treatments that a person with aphasia can self-manage with their families, there may be more, it may free up time to develop other community supports, other community services. It may offer the opportunity to provide more personalised rehabilitation and to focus on that person's life outcomes, including their ability to have conversations, which is a central part of the work that I do. So this is just a summary that I think people with aphasia and their families should have access to. Their own protected data, they should have access to technological advances as they occur. They should be able to access treatment that can be provided online when it's needed or when it's appropriate. There should be self-management options, ongoing provision of education about aphasia and its consequences. We know that that's important and it doesn't end when the person leaves the hospital. Being able to practice skills at a frequency which is going to enable neuroplastic and therefore long-lasting changes. We want these people to have access to the latest technological devices that may support their daily living, that supports lifelong rehabilitation, and that gives them the capacity to engage in learning and relearning skills. Everybody has their own personal recovery trajectory. And so I think at the moment we can't have a one-size-fits-all in terms of the models of care that we're offering. Just before I finish, I'd like to highlight some existing resources that have happened along the way. On our digital health journey, there is now a digital health cooperative research centre. We have a number of investigators involved in this digital health CRC. Tim Shaw is the leader of the research component, and he's here at the University of Sydney, and that represents a $120 million investment in digital healthcare over 7 years. So that offers us a lot of opportunities to leverage upon that that special opportunity, and we've already started working on how we're going to be able to do that. We also have developed a digital health and informatics network, and I encourage you, if you haven't heard of it, to please join. We have, as everybody does, a Twitter handle. There are monthly newsletters, so there was a newsletter came out just a couple of days ago, which always has a lot of interesting information. And there will be a conference in Sydney in February in 2020, for example, called eHealth at Sydney, which will also have a lot of papers, a lot of cutting edge work in relation to digital health. So I encourage you to go and have a look at the Digital Health and Informatics Network's website and register, because then you just get some updates, you get information about what's happening, as well as latest research. So finally, I think for us to have informed, active consumers, prepared, proactive professionals, and an efficient, responsive system, we need to address these issues. We have a disconnection between services. There is a serious lack of integration of medical information across phases of care. There's variable access to telehealth services at the moment, and this creates inequity and inefficiency at best and poor outcomes at worst. And I think that's the essence of what's driving the work that I'm doing, is to address this issue. To do that, we need policy change to establish and enable the use of technology and data within and across services, and having that e-health capability statement process has been very useful in New South Wales, but I imagine that needs to be rolled out nationally. And we don't have the online platforms currently to provide education and training and secure access to data, which is always extremely important, and secure video conferencing. So they're some of the goals that we're focusing on developing as we proceed through this CRE, which I actually think is very exciting. So thank you for attending. Thank you for the opportunity to present to you. That's my Twitter handle if you want to send me a tweet, but if you're more traditional, there's my email as well. So I'm going to stop there, and I believe we have question time.
Yes.
Do we have questions?
We have questions. We have many questions.
Oh.
We'll be moderating via Slido. So thanks to everybody who's been engaging with that. So perhaps we can go through from the top down. We do have a few there, Leanne, so we've got lots of interest.
Wow.
So,
Okay, that's exciting.
shall I read them out?
I can read them out.
Okay, great.
I'm not sure I'm going to be able to answer them all, but I can do my best. So the first one, given the importance of therapeutic relationship in current clinical practice, will there be any research dedicated to patient experience of or with technology? Yes, there will be, and I think that's an essential component of any research that we do. So, for example, we've just finished a study here in the traumatic brain injury field where we measured therapeutic alliance so the patient and their family gave a score of their views of therapeutic alliance on the Agnew relationship measure, for example. So that was just one of our secondary outcome measures. The other thing that, the other approach that we've taken to deal with this is qualitative interviewing. So we've always been able to build that in either during or at the end of a program, a project, which has included telehealth. And so I think all of the research that we're going to be doing, if there's patient involvement, it will necessarily have co-design initially, and then there'll be always the experience of patient experience of using that technology. I think that's critical. I think we've got to do that. It's just part of it. I hope that answers that question.
When you finish with the question,
yeah,
give that tick on the green.
Oh, okay.
Beautiful.
That's very exciting. That gives one a great sense of achievement, really. That's lovely. When will the Aphasia apps be launched? What's special about the app comparing to the current Aphasia apps available on the market? I'm probably not the best person to answer these questions, but I think a lot of the Aphasia apps that are currently available on the market are treatment apps. So it's, you know, how to do VNest using an app, or how to do SILT using an app. So there's a lot of therapy-based apps. The Aphasia app is really developed as a sort of an education tool, and also a way to promote communication between the healthcare professional and the person with aphasia. So they have their own personalised kind of AAC resources to facilitate communication, and also their information about them that they can take through. Once they leave hospital, they've got information about who they are and what their rehabilitation is. And that's about as much as I know about that one. So I don't think, can La Trobe people talk? Are you there?
Yes, we're here, Leanne. We have Marcella.
You are there, because I can't see I can't see. Was there anything else? Is Marcella there? Because it's really...
Yes, Marcella's here.
Babies. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Jill, I would just add to that I guess that there's no shortage of healthcare apps on the market, and there's sort of a sense of fatigue around apps. Like, there's an app for everything. So we've been very careful in how we've developed the app, that we have developed it alongside stakeholder perspective, and we're testing it. So we did a very small pilot of the app last year, and learned lots about the app and lots of things that we wanted to refine on the app. So we've just gone through quite a major revision of the app, and it's gone back out for testing. So in terms of when it's going to be launched, we're holding off until we've got some data that it's usable, that it's useful, that it's relevant, that this is something that health professionals tell us, oh yes, it's doing something above and beyond what we can do without it. So once we have that data, we'll be happy to share it. But we don't want to add another app to iTunes until we know that it's actually worth it.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense, I think. So we're not talking this year, in other words.
No.
Are we? It'll probably be next year, or maybe even the year after.
Let's say next year.
Next, all right, we'll be. I mean, I think that's worth just reminding everybody that we're right at the beginning of this journey. So this is all planned research. So a lot of it hasn't really got off the ground yet. We're really just providing an overview of what we want to do. And, you know, we're very keen to get people involved, which relates to the next question, which is, what is the scope of this research? Which I'm not really sure. There we go. And collaborate. Are you planning to expand and collaborate with other aphasia researchers located in other countries? The answer is yes. We do plan to be collaborating with people obviously around Australia, but also internationally. And we do have international experts in the CRE. We're going to be building our community of practice. And we invite you to join that. So we're really opening this up so that we can include as many people as possible, and that community of practice will not be limited to Australia. You know, we're all collaborating with people from other countries already, so that would continue. Yep. How can we find out more about the automated assessment of interaction content? That sounds really interesting. It is really interesting, and it's based on some preliminary work that's been conducted through the Faculty of Engineering and IT and the Faculty of Medicine here at the University of Sydney. It has not been trialled as yet with the discourse of people with acquired brain injury at all. So all the work's been done looking at how can we train doctors to have better healthcare interactions with their patients. And so we're adapting this program, and it's in a prototype version at the moment, and we're trialling it actually with an honours student this year. That data will be available by the end of this year, and then we're also hoping to trial it with people with aphasia. So there's really not anything around on it at the moment. It hasn't been used in this context at all, but I think it's got quite a lot of promise. And it is really interesting. How do you feel that CBOS and university curricula will need to be updated to accommodate this rapidly changing landscape, technology landscape? Well, I think we're trying to deal with it now in what we're doing, what we're teaching. I think we need to be incorporating. It would need to be included in CBOS. I think we've done those e-health capability statements, and this led that substantive body of work, and everybody wants it. So I think if we're going to deliver graduates who are going to fit into the current healthcare context, I think we need to be incorporating that. Yeah.
Stop there. Thank you. We had a flurry of questions. It's great to see how engaged everybody was on Slido, so thank you for that. And I think we might wrap up there. So thank you so much for attending our series, and there is a polls tab on the Slido app if you'd like to give us any feedback about the experience or any requests for future speakers. Thank you so much, Leanne.
It was a pleasure. Thank you. Thanks everyone for attending.
Thank you.
It was great. I wish I could see you all. But it was great having everybody here.
Thanks, Leanne, from the drone. Bye, everyone.
Bye.